I received more letters. 6 stories of real terror, proof that safety is only an illusion. I will read them to you. The Man with the Knife. I was 13 the night everything changed. My mom, a single parent doing her best to keep us afloat, had left for her weekend night shift. That meant it was just me, my 9-year-old sister Emily, and my 6-year-old brother Noah in the house. I was the oldest, the responsible one. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Our house wasn't anything special, an old 2-story place with creaking floors and doors that never shut quite right. When you walked in, you'd hit the living room. To the right was the kitchen, straight ahead was the downstairs bathroom, and to the left was the staircase leading up to the bedrooms. Upstairs, my room was first on the right. Across the hall was Mom's room, and next to hers, Emily's. Noah's room was down the hall, tucked into the corner. That night had started out normal enough. Mom gave me $20 for pizza before heading to work. We laughed, ate greasy slices on paper plates, and watched TV together. It was cozy, one of those rare moments that actually felt safe. But safety never lasts, does it? About 2 hours later, Emily went to the downstairs bathroom. When she came out, her face was pale. "I heard knocking," she whispered. "Where?" I asked, pretending not to feel my stomach tighten. "On the bathroom window." I wanted to believe she was just spooking herself. But something in her voice told me this was different. I calmed her down, said it was probably nothing. But I couldn't shake it. An hour later there was another knock. This time, at the front door. I crept up to the peephole. My blood froze. A man stood there. He was filthy, stringy brown hair hanging in greasy clumps, clothes stiff with dirt. At first glance, I thought maybe he was homeless. But then my eyes dropped to his hand. He was holding a knife. I forced my breath quiet and turned to my siblings. "Turn off the TV. Lamps too. Now." My voice came out sharper than I intended. They obeyed instantly, wide-eyed. I shoved my old flip phone into Emily's hand. "Go upstairs. Hide in Mom's closet. Don't make a sound." I looked at Noah. "Under your bed. Go." "And me?" I grabbed a kitchen knife with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, then crouched in the upstairs bathtub with the curtain drawn. My heart hammered so loud, I thought for sure he would hear it. Then it happened. The door downstairs, our old, flimsy front door, splintered open with a deafening crack. Would snap like bones. I covered my mouth to stifle the scream clawing at my throat. Footsteps. Heavy, uneven. Doors slamming open downstairs, one after the other. "He's searching." I dialed 911 with trembling fingers, barely able to whisper to the dispatcher. The footsteps grew louder, climbing the stairs, slow and deliberate. Each creak of the wood felt like a countdown to my death. The bathroom door creaked open. I bit down on my knuckles. The shower curtain wavered as if his breath disturbed it. He was right there. Inches away. All he had to do was pull it back. But he didn't. Instead, he turned and walked out. I couldn't think. I could only feel the heat of panic burning through my veins. My siblings. Emily. Noah. I had to protect them. Something inside me snapped. I burst from the bathtub, knife raised, and charged down the hall. He turned, startled, but not fast enough. I slammed into him, stabbing wildly, not even sure where the blade landed. He roared in pain, stumbling backward just as red and blue lights flashed outside. The police had arrived. In the chaos, I saw him try to bolt through the front door, but officers tackled him to the ground. His knife clattered across the floor. And then, it was over. I found Noah trembling under his bed, Emily curled in the dark of Mom's closet, both crying but alive. Mom came home minutes later, her face broken by tears. She quit her job after that. She couldn't leave us alone anymore. Not after what happened. I still see his face in my nightmares, the greasy hair, the knife glinting in the dim light, the way he almost found me behind the curtain. That was the night I learned how thin the line is between safe and hunted. But as terrifying as it was, the next story is even worse. A story not just about survival, but about blood, screams, and what happens when a loyal dog becomes the only thing standing between life and death. Keep listening. It only gets darker from here. The Stranger in the Snow. I was 11 when it happened. 11, sick with a fever, bundled under blankets in my small room in West Virginia. It was December, cold enough for a thin sheet of snow to paint the ground white, the kind of quiet winter night where sound carries in the dark. My entire family had gone to Walmart. It wasn't unusual. I usually stayed home, too anxious to be in big crowds of people. My pit bull, Bella, stayed curled at my feet. She was my protector, always. I didn't know then just how true that was. 15 minutes after my family left, I was watching a show on my laptop when I caught something, a flicker, movement, just outside my window. A shape. Human. It passed so quickly I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Almost. My stomach sank with dread, that primal feeling you can't explain but can't ignore. I tried to push it away, to breathe, to focus on my show. But Bella didn't ignore it. 5 minutes later, she leapt off the bed, her hackles raised, a low growl vibrating from her chest. She was staring at the window. I told myself it was a deer. It had to be. But then, with shaking hands, I pulled back the curtain and looked down. At first, nothing. Just snow, quiet, undisturbed. Then I saw them. Boot prints. Fresh boot prints, leading directly to my window. And then, my heart stopped. Pressed against the side of the house, directly under the glass, was a man. He was tall, 6 feet maybe, with dark brown hair, a beard, and piercing green eyes that seemed to burn straight through the night. He was wearing a heavy snow suit. And he was looking up at me. Our eyes locked. 10 seconds. 10 endless, frozen seconds. He didn't move. Neither did I. But inside, my body screamed at me to run, to do something. When I finally snapped out of it, I grabbed my phone and bolted. Not to call the police. No, stupid me dialed my mom instead. Because when you're a terrified kid, sometimes the sound of your mother's voice feels safer than sirens. She heard the panic in my voice instantly. She told me she was calling the police. Told me to hide. Told me she was coming. I was still on the phone when the sound came. Glass. Shattering. I swear I almost fainted. My whole body shook so violently I could hardly breathe. And then, screaming. Not mine. His. Bella had launched at him. Her snarls tore through the house, followed by his blood-curdling shrieks. I could hear furniture crashing, the sound of a body slamming into the floor. Bella wasn't just barking, she was attacking. For the first time that night, a sick, fleeting relief hit me. Relief that I wasn't alone. Relief that he had made the mistake of breaking into our home. Minutes later, the front door crashed open. This time, it was my mom and the police. They stormed in, shouting, weapons drawn. Mom found me locked in the upstairs bathroom, tears streaming down my face. She pulled me into her arms, and for a moment, I felt safe again. When they led him out, I saw him. Blood dripping, clothes torn, face twisted with rage and humiliation. He was crying, while handcuffed, covered in scratches and bite marks. Bella bounded into the room, tail wagging, tongue out, leaping onto me as if nothing had happened. My hero. My protector. She saved my life that night. I still have her. She's older now, gray around the muzzle, but still full of fire. She'll always be the reason I'm here. But don't think for a second this story is the worst. Because the next one is different. It isn't about a knife at the door or a man outside your window. It's about hearing footsteps in a place you know should be empty. It's about being trapped in someone else's house, knowing you're not alone, and realizing that whatever is there with you doesn't want you to leave. Keep listening. The terror is only beginning. Footsteps outside the bathroom door. I was 17. Summer in Massachusetts. Long days, sticky air, and nights that seemed harmless. That evening I'd just gotten off work at the golf course, sweat and grass stains still clinging to me, when my buddy Ryan called. "Come over," he said. "We'll hang out." Doors unlocked. "I'll be a little late, but just go in." I didn't think twice. I'd been to his place 100 times, a huge, creaky farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place that felt like a piece of history, with its wide porches, crooked stairs, and walls that seemed to breathe in the silence. When I pulled into the driveway, the sun was still high. Broad daylight. I walked in, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and settled into the upstairs den with the TV flickering. It was quiet. Too quiet for a house that size. After a while, nature called. I went down the hall to the bathroom at the top of the stairs. The old place had a magazine basket by the toilet, so I sat there flipping through some comic, waiting for Ryan to get home. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. At first, faint thumps on the floor below. Heavy. Slow. Not the quick, light shuffle of Ryan's sneakers. These were different. Relieved he was finally home, I shouted out, making some dumb joke about him walking in while I was stuck in the bathroom. Silence. No laugh. No answer. "Yo, I'm in here!" I called again, louder. Nothing. The footsteps creaked up the staircase. Each board groaned under weight. They were getting closer. My stomach tightened. "Quit screwing around, man!" "Seriously," I said, trying to sound annoyed. My voice cracked. The steps stopped right outside the bathroom door. I froze. Whoever it was stood there. Not moving. Not speaking. Just breathing. The air felt heavier, pressing against me. My throat was dry, heart pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. For a full minute the silence stretched. Then, slow as a death knell, the footsteps turned and walked down the hall. Away. My body finally obeyed me. I finished as fast as I could, flung the door open, and sprinted down the stairs. The house was empty. The driveway was empty. It wasn't Ryan. Shaking, I bolted outside and called him. No answer. The sun was setting, painting everything in a dim, orange glow. Shadows stretched across the yard, and the silence felt alive. Minutes later, Ryan's car finally pulled in. I rushed him, blurting out everything, the steps, the silence, the presence outside the bathroom. We were stupid kids. Instead of calling the police, we grabbed a baseball bat and a golf club from the shed and went back in. The farmhouse groaned under our weight, but otherwise it was still. Dead quiet. We checked room after room, creeping upstairs until we reached the hallway. At the end of the hall was a large room, no exits, no closets. It had to be the source. We pushed in, bats raised. Nothing. No footprints in the dust, no furniture moved, no open windows. Just silence. We searched everywhere, every corner, under beds, in closets. The house was empty. But I know what I heard. The weight of the steps. The breath outside that thin wooden door. Someone, or something, was there. 15 years have passed, and I still remember the sound. That heavy thump of boots on old wood. That presence waiting for me, just beyond the bathroom door. I'll never forget it. But as unsettling as footsteps in an empty farmhouse may be, the next story is even stranger. Because this time, it isn't about a living intruder. It's about something unnatural. Hooves pounding on a rooftop where nothing should be, a presence that can't be seen, but can surround you, trap you, circle you in the dark until you're begging to wake up. Keep listening. The nightmare only deepens. Michael Myers saved my life. I've always been obsessed with horror. The blood, the masks, the monsters, something about it made me feel alive. By the time I turned 20, my room looked more like a horror museum than a bedroom. Posters, collectibles, masks, even life-size figures. But my prized possession? Michael Myers. Not a cheap costume store cutout. No, this thing was 6 feet tall, replica mask, weathered coveralls splattered with fake blood, and a knife in his hand. A figure so realistic that in the dark, even I sometimes caught my breath looking at him. He stood right next to my bed. Always watching. Always there. My roommates hated him, but I couldn't sleep without him. Strange, right? Like his presence, this silent, cold figure gave me a sense of comfort. But last October, Michael did something I'll never forget. It was a Friday night. I was home alone, curled up downstairs with popcorn, watching a slasher marathon. The house was quiet except for the TV. Then thud. Upstairs. My body stiffened. Every muscle locked. I muted the TV and listened. Another thud. Then silence. I told myself it was nothing, probably just the house settling. But then, another sound. The faint rattle of the back door. Someone was inside. I froze. I hadn't locked it. My heart clawed at my ribs. I turned off the lamp and sat in darkness, holding my breath. Voices, men's voices, low, rough, murmuring. They knew I was home. Footsteps crept up the stairs. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. My bedroom door opened. A man stepped in, hood pulled low, a glint of metal in his hand. A knife. He moved toward me, slow, certain, like a predator closing in. And then, Michael moved. His arm shifted, the faint scrape of fabric cutting through the silence. Not mechanical. Not electronic. Just movement. The man froze. He turned. And there, in the darkness, stood Michael Myers, looming, silent, knife in hand. The intruder's breath hitched. For one split second, he believed. He believed this faceless killer was real. His scream tore through the room, raw and guttural. "Get the hell out of here!" he shouted to someone outside. I heard footsteps pounding down the stairs, the slam of the front door, tires screeching on the street. Gone. Just like that. I stood shaking, staring at Michael. His mask was blank as always, but that night, I swore he'd come alive. I touched his arm, half expecting it to be warm. That's when I noticed something. He was animatronic. I hadn't realized it when I bought him, hadn't cared enough to check. But he'd never moved before. Not once. Yet somehow, at that exact moment, when I needed him most, he did. The police came later. I reported the break-in, showed them the cracked glass where the intruders had thrown rocks to distract me. They took notes but didn't find much. Nothing was stolen. Nothing touched. Except me. I wasn't the same after that night. I still don't know how he moved, whether it was a glitch, a coincidence, or something else. But I do know this: without Michael, I might not be here to tell the story. Sometimes I wonder, was it just luck? Or was something in that figure watching over me all along? All I know is this: Michael Myers saved my life. But as bizarre and terrifying as that night was, what came next is darker still. Because the next story isn't about a man in a mask. It isn't about intruders you can see. It's about something ancient. Something unseen. Something with hooves pounding across a rooftop in the dead of night, chasing children who never should have gone outside. Keep listening. The horror is about to turn into something unexplainable. The hooves on the roof. I grew up in places most people only drive past, the forgotten corners of Tennessee and Florida, farmland and woods where the silence never felt empty. We didn't have internet, barely had TV and cell phones. Forget it. Out there, you entertained yourself with whatever was around. Our home in Tennessee was an old Civil War cabin, perched at the top of a steep hill with a long, twisting driveway. It had 3 levels, a damp basement, the main floor, and an attic room that belonged to me. Out back was a deck, a good 10 or 12 feet above the ground. It was the kind of place that always felt different after dark. One Friday night, my brothers and I were alone, trying to keep ourselves busy. We played manhunt around the cabin, chasing each other through the rooms. But as always, the game got old fast. That's when I had the idea. "I'll hide outside," I whispered. "On the roof." At the time, it felt brilliant, like the ultimate hiding spot. But looking back now, it was the worst decision I could have made. I climbed out my attic window and crawled onto the metal roof. The air was sharp, cool, and the night was so quiet it rang in my ears. Crickets and cicadas hummed, the kind of summer chorus you don't notice until it stops. And then it did. The silence hit like a wave. No crickets. No cicadas. Not even the breeze. Just nothing. My chest tightened. I sat there frozen, straining my ears. That's when I heard it, something landing on the far end of the roof. Clang. The sound echoed through the sheet metal. My heart lurched. I whipped my head toward the noise. Nothing. The roof was empty. I tried to convince myself it was my brothers messing with me. Maybe they climbed up too? But when I shouted down through the attic window, they came running up the stairs, annoyed. "No way," my older brother said. "We told you the roof's off limits." I could see the truth in his face. They weren't out here. He climbed up beside me anyway, determined to prove it was nothing. The two of us stood in the dark, waiting. The silence pressed against us. Then pound. 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 6 heavy steps far across the roof. Like hooves. We turned together, but again, nothing. And then it started to move. The sound came racing across the roof toward us, hoofbeats pounding in circles around where we stood. The vibrations shuddered through the metal beneath our feet. My brother and I spun, desperate to see what was running around us. But there was nothing there. The invisible footsteps circled us again, faster, louder, the roof trembling with every strike. My breath came in ragged gasps, every nerve in my body screaming to run. I stretched out my arm, hoping, terrified, that I'd touch something. Anything. But the air was empty. Nothing but the sound, vibrating, echoing, enclosing us. And then it stopped. The last set of hoofbeats thundered to the edge of the roof, and vanished into thin air. We didn't wait. We scrambled inside, slammed the windows shut, locked every door, every latch, every window. We huddled together in the dark, too afraid to speak, listening for the sound to return. It never did. But that night scarred us. Because it wasn't an intruder. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't anything we could see or explain. Whatever it was, it wanted us to know it was there. And maybe worse, it wanted us to know it could reach us any time it wanted. But as terrifying as it was to be surrounded by something unseen, the last story I have for you tonight is far darker. Because sometimes monsters don't hide in the woods or circle your roof. Sometimes they live next door. The final story isn't about shadows, or sounds, or even survival. It's about blood, cruelty, and a neighbor with a secret so vile it still haunts me to this day. Stay with me. This last story is the one you'll wish you never heard. The Man Next Door. I was 27 when I bought my first home. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A quiet little neighborhood, the kind where everyone waves, lawns are tidy, and nothing bad should ever happen. I told myself I was safe here. I was wrong. To my left lived Leo, an old man with a warm smile and stories about every house on the block. He knew everyone, who'd been divorced, who secretly drank too much, who mowed their lawn twice a week. One afternoon, while we were chatting by his fence, I asked about the man who lived on the other side of me. A tall, gray-haired loner named Tom. That's when Leo's smile faltered. His voice lowered. "You know Tom was involved in that librarian murder, right?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" But Leo just shook his head, muttered something about forgetting he said anything, and changed the subject. That night, curiosity gnawed at me. I sat at my computer and typed his name into the search bar. And what I found? I wish I could unsee. The headlines were decades old, but the details never faded. A brutal home invasion. A middle-aged woman. Beaten. Raped. Murdered. The articles painted it clearly. Tom and a friend had broken into her home during the day. She caught them in the act. Instead of running, they attacked. The friend knocked her unconscious with a bottle. And when he came back, he found Tom assaulting her, her body limp and helpless on the floor. Afterward, Tom beat her skull in with a baseball bat. His friend slit her wrists. Then together, they took black markers and scrawled obscenities across her naked body before stealing her car. When the victim's son came home from school, he found her. He told police she was unrecognizable. I sat frozen at my desk, staring at the screen, bile rising in my throat. Tom had gone to prison, but not for life. His lawyers tried an insanity plea, pointing to a childhood filled with erratic violence. There were stories of him pulling a knife on his own mother. But the court didn't buy it. Still, he served only a fraction of what he should have. His friend was released in 2016. Tom came back here. To this street. To this house. Right next to mine. I closed my laptop, trembling, and looked out the window. His blinds were drawn tight, every one of them. His yard surrounded by a high privacy fence. His old pickup truck barely moved. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing him sitting in the dark, staring out through those blinds, watching. A week later, I had my first real encounter. I was taking the trash out when his chained dog lunged at me, barking, teeth bared. Tom shuffled out, grabbed the dog by the collar, and muttered an apology. I forced a smile, told him it was fine. But inside, every instinct screamed at me to run. Because now I knew who he was. What he'd done. And no matter how many years had passed, no matter how many fences he built around himself, nothing could erase the truth. A murderer. A rapist. A monster. Living a few feet away from my bedroom window. I still see him sometimes, standing in his yard, silent, expressionless. And I wonder if he knows. If he knows I've read the court documents, seen the photos, traced every detail of what he left behind. I wonder if he knows that when I sleep at night, every creak in my house makes me think of him. Because it's one thing to fear the stranger at your door, or the footsteps on the roof. It's another to realize the real evil, the kind that destroys lives and then goes on pretending to be normal, might be your next-door neighbor. And when I pass his house, when I hear that dog growl from behind the fence, I remember the words from that old article. She was unrecognizable. And I think to myself, monsters don't always live in forests, or wear masks, or creep through the night. Sometimes they water their lawn 2 feet away from yours. This was the final story. But if you've stayed with me through all 6, you already know, these aren't just stories. They're warnings. Because the truth is, the next knock on your door, the next face in your window, the next set of footsteps on your stairs, might not be a story at all. It might be you. Let me know what you think in the comments. This was Tell Me What Happened. I'll see you in the next story.